The last activity under step 5 is what we called involving key stakeholders. Under key stakeholders, we understand a specific group who might operate inside the village. These could be very straightforward ones like shops and restaurants, but it also involves more sophisticated one like a large-scale industry. It could be a tourism activity, could be a big monastic or other religious institution. In this lecture, we will give you only a short overview of some activities and how to maybe approach them. And we hope in the future that we will create more lectures on this topic where we give a little bit more details on how to work with them. The objective for this activity is straightforward. How can they involve in the waste management system which you set up, how they can support it? As an activity, it is a little bit more complicated because it really depends on what kind of stakeholder it is. So normally you either approach one individual who is maybe leading a little bit this stakeholder group, or you try to gather a small group of them where you start discussing the topic. You should always keep in mind to discuss two sides. On one side, on how you or the village maybe can support them with waste, and how this stakeholder can support the committee or the waste management system in the village to improve. It is not easy to say how long this activity can take because it really depends on what is your interest, what is the stakeholder's interest, and what activity you then decide to do. In most cases, you will meet them in their own places. So when it is a hotel group, for example, you will go to them, but also when it is, for example, a monastery, you will visit the monk. The stakeholder groups are really quite a decent amount. So the most common ones which you have in the village are first restaurants and shops. They are existing in most villages. So here in Myanmar, you always also have a monastery available. So one or two maybe even. So these three are definitely there. So then not all villages do actually have markets. But if there is a market, this is definitely a key stakeholder. And then only in some specific areas you would have then either tourist industry, or you would have other industries, maybe even polluting industries. So in that case, the discussion becomes more complicated. The first key stakeholder I want to focus on are the businesses in the village, mainly shops and restaurants, with the aim to reduce the usage of plastic bags. Three kinds of campaigns or activities you can do with the shops and restaurants. The first one is that with the volunteers and people who engage your training, you can request them that they talk with the shop owners and engage them, and so that there is a mutual understanding between shop owners and the committee and some other activists to reduce plastic bags. How often this is not always so successful. Another method is what we tried are where you bring together the shop owners as well as the committee, and you try to facilitate a discussion between the both, which then could end in the reduction of plastic bags. The third one is a form of campaign when you have some additional fundings for this available, and that is working with the shop owner that he or she would provide a discount to the customers when they bring their own materials, basically would refuse plastic bags. So this kind of campaign works kind of opposite as a plastic bag fee, and to our experience is very effective, at least during the time of running the campaign. The problem with that campaign for sure is it costs money. So you need to be capable of funding this discount over at least a period of a few months to change slowly the behavior of the customers, but also the one of the shopkeeper. Nearly equally important as shops and restaurants are local fresh markets. Here also the main target is the plastic bag, but for sure, since the fresh market generates a lot of organic material, working on waste segregation is really important. The activities for the plastic bags are exactly the same as in the shops or restaurants, while for the organic waste, there might be the option to set up a compost pile next to the market, but at least to work with the vendors so that they have two bins, one for inorganic waste and one for organic waste, so that the organic waste can at least disposed not in the common waste bin or in your waste collection system. Hotels and tourisms are not always a plague in regards to waste management in the rural area. And I want to give the example here of Nianchang, who has a lodge just next to it, which is called Arakan Nature Lodge. The lodge owner was very much interested in supporting community waste management from right of the start, and after now half a year after the community system in Nianchang is set up, he now is actively supporting the system so that it can sustain itself over a long time. At the moment, where you can find a local stakeholder with funding, influence, any other support, and you can connect that person to the local community waste management system, you have a much higher chance of getting the whole structure sustainable. The last key stakeholder I want to talk about are religious institutions. I want to talk about an example of collecting waste during a festival with over 100,000 visitors. The festival was close to a lake. All the surrounding villages participated in holding that festival. So and before, they never had any form of waste collection. So all the people just came and they were staying there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And for sure, a lot of waste was generated. It looked like an explosion of a plastic bomb after the festival. There were no facilities of waste disposal or anything. What we organized before the festival already were a lot of existing volunteer groups and other CSOs to come together and then start thinking how to organize the waste management and who would be willing to provide voluntary support for the collection. So finally then we were able to collect waste during this 10 days festival. It was a lot of work and it was a real waste management approach with 5 to 10 trucks of waste which we pulled out of the festival and brought them to a makeshift dump site. This collection system, and since it was a, let's say, new way for people who normally come to festivals and they see it is just extremely dirty and suddenly they realize, oh, it can be also nice and clean, had a really good effect not only of the festival itself, but far beyond on the communities in the region, but also on all the CSOs who participated, who then took back this knowledge, let's say behavior or understanding of the issue back to their villages, where it then had a very positive impact on littering and waste management in general. I will focus only on some general challenges you might face. The first one is developing specific solutions for stakeholders is quite time consuming, and also it might require a decent amount of understanding of the operation of the stakeholder. Another issue you might face related to stakeholders like in the tourism industry or other large-scale industry is where the owner or the decision maker is actually not present in the village. So you cannot really solve anything there, but you maybe need to do it outside. Also, some general tips. The first one is start working on some small give and take activities between the stakeholder and your waste committee. And in that way, slowly, time after time, they can increase the commitment or the collaboration between the two. The second one is less like a recommendation, more like a experience sharing. So when you work with some key stakeholders, for us specifically in the tourism industry and the religious institution, which is here the monasteries, this really has a long-term impact, not only actually on the village itself, but on the whole area.